Today on Newsgirls, Trump's big, ugly national makeover,
paved the Rose Garden, biggest renovation by any president ever.
The Department of War will reportedly cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The New York Times top 100 restaurants list.
Can you break down how you even start ranking?
I wore a number of disguises.
What made the top 10 restaurants in terms of flavor really stand out?
And not awful news, VR forests and waterfalls reduced pain sensitivity.
You can now rent a grandma in Japan. Welcome to Newsgirls. I'm Wren.
And I'm Mabel. Let's get into the stories.
So we're sure you've seen what's going on with the National Guard in Chicago, Florida, becoming the first state to get rid of vaccine mandates for school children. And of course, Trump attending the US Open as Rolex's guest, despite a massive 39% tariff on Swiss products.
But there are so many political updates swirling around that you might have missed, so it's time for another edition of Trump Dates. But before we get into it, we've done some polling, and apparently there are some people that are confused about what Trump Dates stands for. It's Trump plus updates.
Trump updates.
Trump dates. We invented it. That's what it stands for. This is our official disclaimer explaining it.
We thought it was so obvious, but then no one in our lives knew what it meant.
Nope.
So we're clarifying. So our first Trump date, Trump just launched a program to require bonds of up to $15,000 for some tourist and business visas from countries that commonly have visitors that overstay their visas.
This went into effect a couple of weeks ago, and basically these visitors would have to pay either $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 to get this visa.
And they only get that money back if they leave before or like when their visa expires. But if they overstay the visa, that money is lost. It goes to the US government.
And this is a pilot program, so the government is just kind of testing it out for a year. But strangely, as of now, it only applies to two countries, so people coming from Malawi and Zambia, so countries in Africa. But the government can add countries to the program whenever it wants, so we'll be monitoring that list.
And this is part of Trump's initiative to discourage anybody from coming to the US, including travelers. Travel has already fallen 3% just since he took office. That's crazy. He's also imposing a $250 visa integrity fee on travelers from countries that require visas, which is so many, just to name a few: Mexico, Argentina, India, Brazil, China.
And that fee is on top of the initial visa fee. So together that would bring the total cost of this visa up to $442, which is crazy. It's one of the highest visitor fees in the world, and it goes into effect October 1st.
And I understand that his whole prerogative is being anti-immigrant, but I do think it's weird to discourage anyone from even traveling to the US, because he's also all about building up American businesses. So that's cutting out a huge source of revenue. There's so many industries that rely on tourists.
No, it is weird. Like, this goes back to the point that we made a couple episodes ago about him banning like international students from American universities. It is clear that this administration doesn't want people from certain countries to come to the US. Like, if you look at this list of where the visa fee applies, it doesn't apply to most European countries, Israel, and even Qatar, which are places that Trump is friendly with. So Trump passed an executive order last week to redesign all the government websites and digital tools to be as beautiful and pleasant as an Apple store. So the order is called Improving Our Nation Through Better Design.
We spent 20 minutes trying to understand if he meant the App Store on our phones or like the Apple retail store. And apparently he means the physical Apple Store, which makes no sense because it's about digital websites. Sorry, it was just like such a roller coaster. I have
it
a lot
really
of
got to Wren. She had a lot to say.
I don't understand. But apparently a lot of Doge main players are coming back to help with this website redesign. And they're joining one of the founders of Airbnb, who's also spearheading.
Yeah, so Joe Gebbia said, "I will do my best to make the US the most beautiful and usable country in the digital world." And he'll be joined by, do you remember that guy that like worked at Doge that was 19 years old and everyone was like, why is a 19-year-old working for the government? So he's helping lead this project as well. And the executive order and the website is pretty vague on the details of what exactly this redesign would entail, but they're focusing on revamping the IRS, green card applications, and passport renewals.
It says, seeking engineers and designers to fix the most broken user experience on Earth. And they say down the road, they could venture into designing physical spaces and buildings as well. And then the Apple Store comparison would make sense. So you might have heard the rumor that the US is at war with Venezuela after the military killed 11 people in a strike on a Venezuelan ship last week that was allegedly carrying illegal narcotics.
And the Pentagon hasn't released specifics about the attack, like what drugs were on board, how many drugs, how the strike was carried carried out. But experts are saying that killing people in international waters doesn't only violate international law and maritime law, but it's actually a declaration of war.
And the U.S. has deployed 7 warships to the Southern Caribbean in recent weeks, plus a nuclear-powered submarine. And together, it's all carrying 4,500 sailors and Marines. So that's a lot. And it's all part of Trump's promise to crack down on cartels. And Rubio said that instead of intercepting the ship on the president's orders, we blew it up and it'll happen again.
And the U.S. is claiming that this crew on the ship was made up of gang members from the Tren de Aragua, which is that Venezuelan gang we've all heard of. And they haven't shared any proof. We kind of just have to take their word on it, which is worrisome because this administration has deported and detained so many people that they've claimed are a part of this gang, only for us to later find out that they're actually not. But this isn't just imprisoning or detaining people, it's literally killing them without due process, so the stakes are so high.
Well, it might not even be legal because Congress hasn't authorized armed conflict against cartels and drug traffickers, which typically they would have to do. Plus, drug trafficking isn't considered a capital offense.
So Trump renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War will reportedly cost the government hundreds of millions of dollars. So officials say that they'll need to change Defense Department seals on more than 700,000 facilities in 40 countries and, of course, all 50 states, which is just such a waste of time and taxpayer money.
Yeah, I never thought I'd miss Doge, but here we are, because so many things will have to change. It's crazy. Everything from letterhead for 6 military branches and dozens of agencies, down to little things like embossed napkins in the dining hall, or like jackets that officials wear, or keychains in the Pentagon store.
And obviously this is all a part of Trump's obsession with projecting strength and just glorifying all the wars that the US has won. He said in a press conference, we won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything before that and in between, and then we decided to go woke. And so we changed the name to DOD. So we're going Department of War.
DOW. Well, Pete Hegseth wasted no time in changing his social media profile to say Secretary of War.
Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders.
Violent effect?
I don't know what he's saying.
It's just so crazy because remember, during the last election, Trump tried to paint Kamala as this warmonger and we're not safe if she's president because she'll get us into wars. And he's the candidate of peace. And now he's literally changing it to the Department of War. Trump is considering banning trans people from being able to own guns. Apparently, senior Justice Department officials have held multiple meetings looking into how they could do this in the past couple weeks. And this is, of course, following the recent Minneapolis school shooting that was carried out by a trans person.
And it looks like the way that they kind of go about doing this is by declaring that people who are transgender are mentally ill and can lose their Second Amendment rights to possess firearms, according to a senior justice official.
And of course, our hearts break and go out to the families of the kids that lost their lives in the Minneapolis school shooting. But the crazy thing about what Trump is now trying to do is that the vast majority of shootings in the U.S. have no connection to transgender people. So in the past 12 years of mass shootings, only 5 shooters were transgender out of almost 6,000 of them. So that's 0.08%. That's not even 0.1%. Meanwhile, 98% of mass shootings are committed by men. So should being a man be declared as being mentally ill and they should be unfit from guns?
No, this framework is flawed in so many ways. It would also create so many legal challenges since obviously millions of Americans suffer from mental illness. They take medication, but they won't be, barred from buying firearms. Why not? It's no surprise that the only time Republicans would ever want to restrict gun rights is targeted at this minority whose rights this administration has slowly started to erode.
Exactly. So GLAAD said instead of actual solutions, the administration is again choosing to scapegoat and target a small and vulnerable population. Trump just canceled Biden's plan to require airlines to compensate passengers with cash, meals, and lodging for flight disruptions, to which former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg posted, "Our billionaire president put an airline lobbyist in charge of the Department of Transportation, so no, this is not a surprise."
Yeah, it's not a good look for Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who used to be a lobbyist for the group that actually endorsed this reversal. It's called Airlines for America and literally represents Delta, United, American, every major airline. So this isn't shocking, because obviously airlines don't want to pay all of these passengers.
I mean, no duh. The rule would have required airlines to pay up to $300 for domestic delays of up to 6 hours and up to $775 for delays lasting 9 hours. Plus, they have to cover lodging and meals if the delay is due to an airline system outage or mechanical failure.
And we literally reported on this in our holiday episode last year, so that's how recent this compensation went into effect. It was Buttigieg's biggest achievement and was such a big win for flyers, especially since it followed all those massive flight cancellations over the summer. So Trump's been hosting a lot of dinners at the White House to try and show off his recently renovated Rose Garden, which looks identical to Mar-a-Lago. He hosted the biggest tech leaders in the world like Tim Cook, Sam Altman, and Mark Zuckerberg last week, but unfortunately they were reined in and the dinner had to take place inside.
And in classic Trump fashion, they all went around and personally thanked him one by one. I don't understand how this happens at every meeting he attends.
Thank you for incredible leadership, including getting this group together.
Thank you, Bill. That was very nice.
And thank you for being such a pro-business, pro-innovation president. It's a very refreshing change.
It's incredible to be among everyone here, particularly you and the First Lady.
No, seriously, it's so lame. It looks like they were all thanking him for his investment in AI and apparently promoting chip manufacturing in the US, which has been getting a lot of reporting. Tim Cook announced at the dinner that he was investing $600 billion into the US, and of course, glaringly absent was Elon Musk.
The Broverse continues. But earlier in the day, several of the tech execs attended the White House Task Force on Artificial Intelligence Education Roundtable, which was hosted by Melania. So she had a lot of standout quotes.
The robots are here. Our future is no longer science fiction. During this primitive stage, it is our duty to treat AI as we would our own children, empowering, but with watchful guidance.
She is literally so random. I feel like she's never in DC. She never really talks about anything, but she clearly feels very strongly about the dangers of AI.
Well, Trump finally did make it outside the following night and hosted what he's calling the Rose Garden Club, which is basically just a dinner party for Republicans. And in case you missed it, he paved the Rose Garden in the biggest renovation by any president ever. So now it has this big limestone patio, and he brought in country club style chairs and tables and yellow striped umbrellas that are actually exact replicas of the ones at Mar-a-Lago.
Quote, we call it the Rose Garden Club, and it's a club for senators, for congresspeople, and for people in Washington, and frankly, people that can bring peace and success to our country. It reminds me of the executive branch that was that membership club that Don Jr. started. Why is this family obsessed with members only clubs?
Well, he's also obsessed with Mar-a-Lago because he's also gilded the Oval Office. So there's just gold plating everywhere, and that looks exactly like Mar-a-Lago. There's just gold plated walls everywhere. And then he's also building a $200 million ballroom. And just look at the mock-ups. This is the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago. It's exactly the same.
And oh my God, outlets have been reporting that these moldings look really similar to accents you can buy on Home Depot for $30. They're actually reporting on how this could be from Home Depot, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they did. As for the ballroom, construction is set to begin this month.
Well, with all these big renovations, I hope he remembers he's only here for 4 years.
So the New York Times just came out with its top 100s restaurant list for 2025, and this list is a huge deal. It's the restaurant critics list that everyone looks to. It's kind of like the Bible, and it's crazy. There's 20,000 restaurants in New York City, and they narrow it down to 100.
I can't even fathom how they do that. And what stood out to me when I was looking through the list is the variety. You expect it's just going to be the top 100 fanciest hoity-toity restaurants, but it really isn't. It obviously has a lot of cuisines we'd expect to be on it: French, Italian, Japanese, American, Chinese, those. But then it also has Malaysian, Uyghur, Nigerian, Iranian, Pakistani, Albanian, Scandinavian, Egyptian, so many different ethnicities. And then it also has steakhouses and tacos and pizza and burgers. So it covers the whole swath of New York dining.
And the Times list comes out every year, but this year was really different. So the top 10 restaurants were ranked and the rest of the 90 weren't. So that's different than how they usually do it. And it's usually ranked by one Times critic named Pete Wells, but he actually retired last year. So this year was the first time that they had multiple reviewers basically collaborate in making this list.
So we are actually talking to one of the New York Times food critics who helped make this list, Priya Krishna, about this secret process to rank all of these restaurants and look behind the scenes.
So Priya, being a food critic sounds sounds like such a cool job, but we understand that it's such a massive undertaking to compile this list. Can you break down how you even start ranking the top 100 restaurants in the city? Like, where do you begin?
So it was me and Melissa Clark. We were both serving as interim restaurant critics for this past list. And we started with Pete's List, and we decided we were going to scout every single place on Pete's List and make sure that it was still top 100 worthy. And then we made a list of places that we felt were worthy of scouting. And so that brought the total number of places to scout to about 200 places. We visited each of those restaurants. And then when we looked at the list, we were like, oh, we have like, for example, too many Korean fine dining restaurants. Maybe we need to not over index on that, and wanted to make sure we had a diversity of cuisine, style, price point. And when it came to the top 10, kind of each proposed candidates, and then we each went to the restaurants that we hadn't been to recently on each other's lists, and then we agreed on a mutual 10. Ranking the top 10 was the really hard part. It's just so subjective, and Melissa and I have really different tastes, which I think makes for a better list.
And there must be so much that goes into critiquing food and even judging, because you're judging the whole dining experience, right? Not just the food that like we wouldn't even think of as like lay people going to a restaurant. Can you kind of walk us through all of the different elements that you're taking into consideration when you're ranking them?
Sure. I mean, I think the reality is that people are thinking about a lot of these things going into restaurants. And so we want to think about them as well. I am very much like the food is what is most important to me, but I realize that for diners, it's about a lot of things. It's about the food. It's about the service. It's about how the place makes you feel. It's about how nice the dining room is, not in terms of like how fancy it is, but how much you want to actually spend time in this dining room. Like, are the vibes good? Is it stiff? Is it relaxed? But like, there's just so many things that go into deciding that a restaurant is really special and worthy of consideration. And ultimately it ends up being a mixture of those things. But I try to take all of them into account. Like, I feel like you're either a food diner or a vibe diner. I am definitely a food diner, but I try to think also like a vibe diner.
Yeah, something that really stood out to the list, and you mentioned this, that there's like Michelin starred restaurants, but then there's also like grab and go. There's sandwiches and there's pizza. And I was thinking how hard it would be to rank those or like put those against each other.
I'm not judging every restaurant on how fancy it is. I'm judging a restaurant against what it aims to be. If a restaurant aims to serve really amazing falafel at a counter spot, I'm judging it on that. If a restaurant is a $300 tasting menu aiming to, provide really impeccable service and really interesting wines, you cannot judge a casual restaurant using fine dining standards and vice versa.
And so when you are judging the vibe of a restaurant, do you, I've always wondered as a food critic, have to wear disguises so that they don't like make the restaurant extra nice and give you like really good service, or is that something that they just say in movies?
Yes. I wore a number of disguises, and after I left the job, I posted all of them on Instagram if you want to take a look. But now the New York Times no longer does disguises.
Restaurants will know this critic is here from the New York Times.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I did it because I just truly wanted to have a normal dining experience, and it just doesn't feel normal when you go as yourself. And, I had experiences where I went as myself and got incredible treatment, and then went in disguise as like a regular person and was kind of totally forgotten. But like at a really great restaurant, it doesn't make a difference.
Honing in on one of the elements that you are obviously probably most taking into consideration would be the flavor and the taste of the food. And you said you and Melissa have very different taste buds. And for you, like what made the top 10 restaurants in terms of flavor really stand out compared to the rest of the 100? Like what were you really judging in those flavors that you were like, oh, this isn't the top?
For me, it's not that I'm looking for particular flavors. I'm looking for flavors and food that tell a really distinct story that could only belong to that chef, or they're doing something really classic and really traditional and just doing it exceptionally well.
If you had to suggest like a couple spots, maybe it could be like one fine dining, one not as fine dining that like every person who visits New York or every New Yorker needs to go to. Like, what would they be?
I think you should go to Sema for like really my favorite dosa on the planet. I think you should go to Ha's Snack Bar for not only an incredible wine list, but just some of the most interesting food you will ever you will find in the country. I think the chef described it to me as, what if France didn't colonize Vietnam, but the other way around? And I thought that was really interesting.
Whoa.
And I would send them to Bar Kabawa for Jamaican patties.
Oh my gosh, I haven't been to any of these. I need to do that.
We like looked into your background and saw that you've lived in so many different places and you've reported obviously on food across the country. Is there a genre of food in New York that they like the city does better than other places in general?
Pizza. I really strongly believe in New York City pizza supremacy. Even being from Texas, I'm like, there are some good pizzerias, but like there's something in the water here. Our pizza is superior.
I actually agree with that. I am from the Midwest, so Chicago pizza,
Okay, yeah.
that's such a huge thing. But I agree.
And we noticed that the top 10 that restaurants that were ranked were all in Manhattan. And so we've seen some people be like, oh, maybe all the boroughs weren't represented in the top list, in the top 10. What do you say to that?
For the top 10, we were just going for the restaurants that sort of spoke to us the most, and they happened to be in Manhattan.
We have done a story in the past about the black market for getting reservations to these very high-end restaurants, and that there are bots that are constantly grabbing them before humans can. Do you have any tips now that we know that you actually did this in kind of undercover? Do you have any tips for getting into these coveted restaurants?
Set a calendar reminder to make a reservation. Like I would literally set alarms on my phone and wake up and make reservations. Don't be afraid to walk in right at opening. I kind of love a 5 o'clock or a 5:30 dinner. And so I would just stand in line with everyone else. Also, just like bar seats, don't be afraid to go in and chance it at the bar. I think eating at the bar is one of my favorite things. And I love that many restaurants in New York still keep their bar open for walk-ins.
And our last question, do you have any tips for us, regular restaurant goers, on how to assess our food with more nuance? How do we eat and taste our food like a food critic?
I think it's all about context. The more you eat, the more you know. The more bowls of pho you eat, the more you can judge, this is a really good bowl of pho. But the other thing that's, I think really wonderful about food is that, your taste is your taste. Everything is subjective. I think that if you have a set of 10 restaurants that is totally different than my set of 10 restaurants, well, I think that's wonderful. I don't think there is any objectivity in food. And I think that's kind of why I love what I do.
So anytime the world feels too heavy, after reporting on all of the stories from our first segment, we always feel like we need to combat that with a not awful news roundup.
That's always fun. So if you're new here, this is just a roundup of feel-good stories, because there are so many niche, uplifting stories that will make you smile that kind of get buried by a lot of the heavier stuff.
We came across such a cool story the other day. So scientists found that digital waterfalls might actually be more effective than medication when it comes to pain relief. So researchers at the University of Exeter ran this experiment with 29 healthy volunteers.
And they basically simulated pain by giving them electric shocks, and then they immersed them in classic 360 virtual reality. And they were shown scenes of the forests of Oregon, which is so beautiful and lush.
And they found that these VR forests and waterfalls reduced pain sensitivity nearly twice as effectively as painkillers, which is crazy to me. And the relief actually lasted at least 5 minutes after this 45-minute experience. And they noticed that the more present people felt in VR, the stronger that the pain relief actually was.
All of this is, of course, mimicking the effects of real nature, which actually lights up the brain's own pain relief pathways and changes how the brain processes pain.
Right, which is why VR might be so much more helpful than we would have originally thought. If you can't step outside because of where you live or because you're living in chronic pain, you can slip on a headset and just see pictures of nature and actually feel better.
I mean, New York, living in New York, there is no nature. This would be so helpful here. And we have previously reported on how VR is being used in courtrooms to recreate crime scenes. So there's just so much potential. On to our next story. So Japan just rolled out the sweetest program you will probably ever hear about in your life. You can now rent a grandma in Japan.
No, it's such an incredible program. It launched in Tokyo, and you can literally hire a woman aged like 60 to 94 for stuff like cooking or life advice or even for moral support during like a breakup or something. Apparently, one customer said that they didn't have any family to bring to a wedding, so they literally hired a grandma to pretend to be a family member.
And clients pay about 3,000 yen per hour, which is only $20. And it's cool because then the seniors get meaningful work and company and, of course, pay. It's a win-win for everybody.
And we all know Japan has the world's most like rapidly aging population. So this is giving a huge portion of people who live in that country a really valuable, meaningful way to live.
Through our research, we know there are not a lot of jobs that are open to older women in Japanese society. It's really just like housework. So this also just opens another option for them.
And according to the service's website, quote, the merit of age is the ability to remain unfazed by small things. A Jamaican student just invented a self-disinfecting door handle for hospitals.
And this could be a game changer for any communal space with door handles, like hotels, restaurants, businesses, offices, especially in the post-COVID era.
So his name is Rayvon Stewart, and he built this special door handle called Zermasol that looks like a little Pac-Man, and every time you grab it to like open a door, a touch sensor activates UV lights that kill 99.9% of like bacteria and viruses and germs.
It's so cool. And apparently it's so cheap and easy to install, and it only takes 30 seconds for it to work and disinfect.
Which is huge, especially in places like the Caribbean where it's hot and bacteria spreads fast and budgets are pretty tight.
Well, Rayvon's already won multiple awards for it.
And he's currently seeking a patent under international intellectual property law for it and wants to like roll it out in other countries.
Please put him in charge of airline bathrooms next. Wait, Mabel, did you hear about it's like ancient Roman mosaic they just discovered in Sicily?
No, what is it?
So archaeologists just found this mosaic at the Villa Romano del Casale, which is this beautiful ancient Italian palace. And it shows sandals at the bottom of this cold plunge pool. But the craziest part is that they look exactly like modern flip-flops. Like if you're imagining Havaianas in your mind, like that's exactly what they look like. But this mosaic is from the 4th century CE.
So that's 1600 years ago, which is crazy. And I feel like every time we've seen like illustrations of ancient Romans, I always think of those like heavy gladiator sandals. So when do they wear these flip-flops?
Well, Romans would have worn them to the bathhouse or the frigidarium, which is like the cold plunge area, which is where this mosaic is located. And they would have been made of leather and, get this, sometimes wood. So imagine wood shoes.
Oh, I love this story. As you know, I'm literally obsessed with flip-flops, even though everyone comes at me for them. I'm wearing them right now, so
she is.
This is relatable. So astronomers just spotted what might be the largest black hole ever. It's 36 billion times the mass of our sun. And Wren, do you want to tell everyone what it's called?
It's called the Beyonce of the universe.
Iconic.
And it's one of the biggest objects ever detected ever. Its mass is greater than 100 Milky Way galaxies combined. So the entire galaxy that we're in times 100 plus more.
And it's pretty far away from us. It's hanging out about 5 billion light years away in a galaxy called the Cosmic Horseshoe, which is actually in the Leo constellation, which I'm a Leo, so this is a great story.
But the craziest part is that its gravity bends light, I don't know how you do that, from the galaxy behind it to create this perfect glowing circle. It's called an Einstein ring. It just looks like a halo floating in the sky.
And scientists figured this out by using a combination of gravitational lensing and tracking the motion of nearby stars because you can't see this black hole. And the scientists think that a black hole of such proportions could only originate from like galaxies colliding. And this is really scary. They're wondering whether that'll ultimately be the fate of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. Scientists in South Korea have figured out how to restore a person's sense of smell using just radio waves. So no surgery, no chemicals.
Wait, like literally just radio waves if you turn on the radio?
No, literally. Like they use a tiny antenna and put it near the forehead to send gentle radio waves into the brain. And then after just literally 5 minutes, participants could detect really faint odors, like they say diluted alcohol or fruit scents, better than before.
Well, that is insane. How long does it last?
So one session of this would improve the smell sensitivity for over a week, which is crazy because there isn't anything invented that actually helps with this yet.
I mean, this could be a game changer for people who lose their smell because of an injury or illness or long COVID. That's really common.
Yeah, did you ever lose your sense of smell after getting COVID?
just during, like, just in the acute phase of like the first few days of being sick. But remember, during the pandemic, there were all those people on social media talking about how they're losing their sense of smell and taste, like some permanently, some for years. So I really hope they see this study. And we love to end on an animal story. So scientists have just confirmed a third species of manta ray in the world.
Yeah, it's called the Atlantic manta, and it's literally giant. Like, it ranges from 16 to 20 feet. And I guess they can be found swimming on the U.S. East Coast all the way down to Brazil, through the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico.
So marine biologists have suspected there was another unknown type of manta ray for decades, but they've just never found it until now. And I had no idea until now there were only 2 species of manta ray.
That was really surprising. And scientists say that this one specifically stands out with V-shaped white patches on its shoulders, a lighter face. And apparently they say you can tell the difference between different types of rays because of the patterns on their underbelly. So this one has dark underbelly spots.
And one of the craziest parts is that its genetics show that it only recently diverged from other manta rays. So we're actually seeing speciation happen in real time. So it's like evolution playing out.
So that's all our stories for now. But if you liked what you saw, Wren and I actually host Good News to Go with the Good News Network every Monday. So if you subscribe to their YouTube channel, we'll do stories like this every week.
Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Newsgirls. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, and join us next week for a deep dive into the Built credit card that everyone's talking about and the new show that they launched on TikTok.
See you guys.